Hi everyone, you're listening to the First Year Decoded podcast hosted by IEEE UFT, a show that decodes the first year experience by providing valuable insights and experience from current engineering students. I'm your host, Brittany Chow, a Track 1 AC222 and one of the logistics directors at IEEE UFT, along with producer Akinori Kimura, who will explore various topics of academia and professional development to help you succeed in your first year of engineering. Welcome back to the First Year Decoded podcast. Now that the semester is halfway through, I think most of you have got a gist of how university is like. Some of you may be breezing through the coursework, and that's amazing. However, I think most people have gone through more of a rough journey, given that it is midterm season right now. This episode is all about after the midterm. We as upper year students have been through exactly where you are right now. We can't say that our experience is entirely the same, but we just want to let you know that we are here for you, and please do reach out to us if you are struggling or would like some advice in school. Even if we can't help you personally, we can direct you to resources. For this episode, we have brought in our guests Jason Lloyd, an Indy 222, and Cassey Shao, EC 222, to share their thoughts and experience on post-exam anxiety and discipline switching. Please note that this episode was pre-recorded earlier in the semester in person when Toronto was in the Stage 3 phase, and we have all done our best to ensure all the guests feel comfortable and safe. Okay, so thank you guys for coming today. As you guys know that this is our episode all about post-midterms. So, I mean, we've all taken so many midterms at this point. Like, we're all third-year engineers. Do you have any, midterms that you're, it's, the most memorable one?
Yeah. My first midterm, it was Mat 188.
Yes, I
it was
relate.
Up until that point, I was doing my work. I was pretty on top of everything. I didn't understand everything great, but I felt like I was walking in with, at least some confidence. I'm gonna do okay. And I did it, and I was like, oh yeah, that felt okay. Maybe a 75. I was lucky, 80, low 80. Got it back. Got a 58. And I was like, what happened? And the average was a 68, maybe. It wasn't great.
It was pretty low, yeah.
It was pretty low, but I was still below average, and I was like, man, I don't know if I can do this, because I walked in to U of T with a relatively low high school average. I came in with a 91.
Oh, that's around the same as me.
Okay, yeah, because I was looking at some of these stats, and it was something like 93, 94 average. I was like, okay, so I'm already not particularly smart out of the people here. So I have to work hard, and I don't think there's much of a correlation between high school or university grades, and actually I think I still stand by that. But I had to come in with the mindset of I have to work a little bit harder than everybody else. And I did, and I still bricked that first midterm. And the main thing that I would have to take away from that is that sometimes you work really hard and it just doesn't work out.
Yeah.
But the other thing happens as well. My chem midterm, I finished it and I was like, wow, I'm lucky if I got a 30. I don't think I answered a single question right. Part marks for days. And I was like, man, if I got a 30, I'm lucky. I got a 77. So you just gotta keep going at it. You're gonna mess some stuff up, and it's kind of out of your control sometimes. But sometimes you're also going to get a bit of a gift, and I think at the end of the day, it'll average out. So if you get railed on your first midterm, you have to just kind of keep going, because things will figure themselves out.
Yeah, you can either go you fail the midterm, the first one, you're like, wow, frick, university is really not for me, or you can go okay, now I just gotta grind even more. For me, it was that case because I felt like I walked into university I had the same mindset. I didn't have a really high average, and I was like, you know what, I just want to pass. If I pass, I'm okay. But kind of being said that, I didn't really have the the thought of trying to understand the material. In high school, you know, it was not that hard for me. I just kind of like plug and chug some formulas, you know, and it was like, okay, that's cool. And I think being surrounded by the environment afterwards, where people are all trying to understand something, it was after the first midterm that I realized, there's a reason why people do that. Like, you actually have to understand this to do this exam.
Yeah.
Which is like, yeah, like, I should have realized it earlier, but it's good that you kind of had that initial shock, at least for me, that I kind of start grinding and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely like relate to the initial shock. Something though, I wish I had the mindset going into like my first midterm or my first midterms. I don't actually remember what my first midterm was, but I just remember doing bad.
Yeah.
But I wish I had the mindset that I like needed to work a lot harder and stuff than high school, because so my calculus midterm was definitely like my most memorable one, I think, for me, because I think that was the first time I ever got like a 30-something% on any sort of evaluation. And going into the exam, the way I kind of like prepped for it, like I felt pretty confident in my calculus because like it was a lot of review from high school. And so like to prepare, I literally put it off really last minute, sort of like a strategy, or like not a strategy, like a bad habit, correct, that I kind of developed. So like last minute, I like read over all my lecture notes to make sure I like had the concepts in mind, and then kind of went into the exam. Had like no idea what was going on, just pretty much like answered every question with like, I don't know, whatever I could to get those par marks for days, as mentioned. And then after the exam, getting my like grade back was definitely a shock factor. And I think like a piece of advice that I would give to anyone like approaching like studying exams, which we'll probably talk about later, is doing practice exams, because I never realized how valuable it is to do practice exams over just like reviewing content, because my strategy was always like review content first and then practice exams last. And then one of my friends in first year was like, yo, like, let me tell you, like, review content as you're doing the practice exams. Like, if you're missing concept, that's when you go back and read it. And like that strategy like helped me a lot more with like rather than kind of sticking with my old high school habits.
I think I agree, because I also had that really bad habit of, you know, it just kind of like makes you feel incomplete when you don't go over the entire course content before you do an exam. But I later kind of like I found out this really late though. I think it was like second year, and I was like, I gotta change my study habits for midterms. And it was like, I would try and attempt the final, like the practice exam, but that would be like the day before the midterm or something. And I'd be able to do like 1 or 2. Like that's my max. I can't even do 3. So yeah, I think realizing that is also good, just having a different study method.
Yeah.
Just because like the type of question they ask, it's always like kind of like similar every year. And so like even if you like know the concept, if you don't have practice doing the problems, then when you actually go into a nervous environment in the exam, like you sometimes they don't give you the time to think about it too much, and so you just have to do it. And like if you do practice exams, it's gonna be like really easy. And you kind of like, even before you start doing the problem, you kind of know like what you have to do.
Yeah, like I don't know if like you want me to say this, but at the end of the day, they're not grading you on how much you know. They are grading you on how well you can answer questions on that test. And I think that practice exams and midterms best prepare you to how to answer questions on the test. If I have to break it down, I think 80% of my studying was doing the practice midterms and being like, okay, how do I answer this question? And then figuring out how to answer that question. Because out of like, if you look at 4 past midterms, the questions are going to be 60 or 70% similar. So if you only do the practice midterms and know how to answer the questions on the practice midterm, you're going to be able to answer 60 to 70% of these questions. And like obviously it'll depend on the course. Like sometimes it's a different exam every time, and like you just gonna have to figure out, okay, it's not gonna work for this one. But for a lot of them, especially in first year, I think, like the math courses, they're gonna be pretty rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure.
I fully agree that the practice midterms are 100% the best way to study.
Yeah, I mean, it's good because we kind of like all built that experience from you know, trial and error. So I think it's a valid kind of like route that everyone kind of found out later that that is like the important thing. And I guess one big thing that we kind of mentioned earlier is kind of getting the results of the exam, like the midterms back. And I would say like, for me, sometimes I would avoid looking at it if I have another midterm coming up, because for me that ruins my mood if I have a really bad mark. But then some people actually use that to motivate them. Like they look at it and they're like, oh, I did so bad on this one, so time like for redemption on the next one. Like, what's your general method on like, do you just look at your exams right away?
Yeah. Well, I don't really. So to answer your question, I look at my exams right away. But I don't really use it as like motivation for the next switch. Now that you mentioned that, that's a pretty good strategy, like something that I'll keep in like the back of my mind. But usually what I do is I just like look at the marks right away, because a lot of exams, like the chances for regrading, like the window is really like short. So it's like you need to submit a request within 36 hours, and I can't even tell you how many times I've submitted regrade requests. So after finding that out in first year, because I missed the deadline for one of them, ever since then I've just kind of been like really fast at like looking at my marks, to like, and looking what I did and looking at the solution key just to see if everything's okay, I guess.
Yeah, I look at it immediately. But I don't think I use it as motivation. I also am not disheartened by it. I mean, the first few times, if I was shocked, then I was like, wow. Like, I was shocked. But like, at the end of the day, I don't think it affected what I did after. I think for the most part, after I figured out, like, okay, I can do this, and a little bit of like, yeah, I can make it through this. Once I got over that kind of fear, it was very much the sense of each midterm was its own midterm and each test was its own test. And whatever happened. Like, you know, I can't go back. It's over.
Yeah, it doesn't
as good
matter.
or as bad as it was.
Yeah,
it
doesn't really matter that much. Like, I know a lot of my friends that failed like 2 out of 3 midterms for one course and they still passed the course overall.
100%.
Yeah, so like I would say, but it definitely hits me hard though. Like, I think for me, it's not when I do bad on a midterm, it's when I did lower than average. It's hard for me to not compare with average when the average comes out and I'm like, wow, really? And it's like that kind of comparison. And I think one thing that's really important in here is the mindset. Kind of like when you do well on a midterm and when you do bad on a midterm, like what mindset do you have? Do you get really happy for a good midterm, or do you try to kind of like remain calm and like, you know, like, oh, it's okay, it's just a good midterm, whatever. Like, it should go both ways.
Yeah. I personally go with definitely the calm method. I mean, I obviously feel good after a good midterm. Yeah. But when it comes to the bad ones, it's like, that sucks. Like, gotta do better for the next one. And like, that's kind of it. Because I just try not to worry about stuff. I feel like in general, stuff just will work out.
Did you start off with this kind of like mindset, or did it also take you some adjusting time in the beginning?
Definitely took me some adjusting time, because especially for the first semester of university, you are in a world where you're told that everybody here is like everyone here killed it in high school, you know? Yeah. Like, let's be real, in high school, there's a large variance in terms of the different strengths and weaknesses of people. You know, some people are English people and some people aren't. Most of us probably aren't huge English people, but you come here and it's kind of like you're competing with that top 20 or 10%, right? And I walked in with the understanding that, or not, maybe not the understanding, but the belief that, okay, I made it in, which is great, but I'm still, like, out of that 10%, maybe I'm the bottom 10% of that 10%, right? So I have to work really hard, and good grades or bad grades, you know, I have to keep going. But what you said earlier about comparing yourself
Mm-hmm.
with other people, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I definitely do it. And I actually use that as the main gauge for how well I did.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I mean, it's the average.
saying you got a 60 in a vacuum is kind of meaningless, because if the average was a 50, then like you did
it better.
quite well.
Mm-hmm.
But if the average was a 90, it's like, okay, everyone aced it. Why didn't I ace that midterm or that final? So I think it's actually pretty important, not just in the sense of knowing how you compare to others, but if everyone got a 50, and that means a lot of people failed, you have some confidence that that's going to be belled or that's going to be curved. So just because you got a 60, it's like, oh, I didn't do great. But maybe everyone goes up 10% or something, right? So before you start worrying, or if you have to worry at all, know where you are relative to everybody else, because, sometimes bad marks aren't that bad.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think similar to what Jason just said, I also take like the calm approach in terms of like when receiving my marks back. When I do like really badly on something, I definitely kind of going back to the motivation. Like I don't like let it just pass. In terms of like forget about it. I definitely like keep that midterm like at the top of my desk, so it's like something I can come back to. And something that I like have made an effort to do, especially like in second year, is like actually write down like the correct solution instead of just like read over it, and like resolve the problems to make sure that like I really understand where I went wrong, so that hopefully like if a question like that appears again on the final, I'm able to like not do as badly.
Yeah,
That's
that's
really
probably smart.
Yeah. I would suggest that. Do I do it in practice? I'm not too sure, but I think that's good. Like for me, I think it's as I said earlier. Like I came to that university with that kind of like mindset that we mentioned earlier. So I wasn't really fazed by how bad I would do, as long as because I would also do around like let's say the worst was like 50 or something. I would always kind of like pass that line. I think it was like for me it was second year, when it really hit. There was this one course in the midterm. I think I got like 30 something, and that's when I kind of had the first like, whoa, so this is what people feel like when you kind of just like get influenced by it so much. And I walked out of it. I think the prof did a great job. Like I think what he did is he plotted all his past stats of people that did bad on the midterm, and like how well people did on the midterm versus final exams. And as you can see the chart, of course there's like people in different area, but then there was a group of people that did horribly, like 30-40 in the midterm, but then like it was real stats, they did like 80 or like a lot above the average for the final. So like I think a prof showing me that really made me motivated. So like I think that's something that you have to keep in mind. Like it's not workable. Like you can walk out of it with your friends. Like your friends are there to help you too. I would say so.
It's really interesting how you guys all said that, because I think I'm the third person that like I don't want to worry about like the average and what other people are doing, and I want to focus on like what's in my control and like how I can get better. But like as long as you can, I agree that as long as you can be more analytical and just look at it that way, it might be a good idea to like look at the average and determine how well you did on that given exam.
So we're just kind of like talking about the after exams, right? Like when you get the results. But what do you do right after the exam? Like what's your do you have a routine or anything going on?
Well, my answer, I'm not very proud of this, but usually before an exam, because I kind of like procrastinate quite a lot actually. I like don't sleep a lot before an exam, which I don't recommend doing at all. And so like the first thing I do after an exam is like I just chill out. Like I like lie in bed, like watch a couple of YouTube videos that like take my mind off of it, and then I definitely wish like I like start the next thing, because there's always something else to do, so prevent myself from procrastinating again. But in all honesty, that's kind of I guess my routine.
Yeah,
what I do is obviously this is an in-person thing,
Yeah, for sure.
and so on McCall Street where the exam center is, there's like a Krispy Kreme down the street.
Yes.
And so every time after the exam, like me and my friends get together, we briefly talk about the exam, like what we think about like some problem and so on. And then we just forget about it and just go to Krispy Kreme, get donuts, and then try to get your mind off of the exam because like there's nothing you can do after you finish taking the exam, like you said. And so that. But if I'm alone, I don't know what I would do. I would probably talk to my parents or something and just get it off my head.
I definitely chill too. Like, I've planned so many times. Like, I have friends that actually grind after they do their exam, which is super impressive, but it's definitely not for everyone. For me, I've always been like, you know what? After the exam, I'll chill for 2 hours and then I'll like start this other homework. Never happens.
Never
like,
happens.
I just end up being
happens.
like, you know what? I deserve this reward. That exam was hard. And I think it's valid as long as the next day you don't continue that mindset and you pick it up. Because some exams are really close. You might have an exam on Tuesday and like Thursday.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And you have to know when you kind of have to like, you know, get over it and prepare for the next exam. Because as Jason just said, it's just an exam. Each exam is like individual, right?
Yeah. So I guess my routine is you leave your exam and you're with your friends. Like, this is in person, obviously, but you're with your friends and you talk about it. And say it went really well. You're feeling good. And you talk about it for a little bit. Usually the better you felt about it, the less you talk about it, because like there's less angst about it. But like, say it was bad, you talk about like, wow, that was really tough. Or I didn't answer anything. Or like everything was a guess. I just pretend like I knew what integrals were, but I didn't actually know how to integrate anything. And like, it sucked, but then you just kind of laugh about it, you know? It happened, you know? There's nothing you can do about it anymore. And sometimes I would go to the gym. Sometimes I hang out with my friends. Sometimes we'd get dinner. But I would not go back to work.
That's fair.
Just because you've been working hard for like the last 48 hours for this midterm probably.
Yeah.
And the last thing you want to do is go back to that grind. Now there's some times where you're like, okay, I have a midterm in 6 hours. Like, what can you do, right?
Yeah.
But in general, take it easy because the calmer you are after a midterm, the easier it is to reflect and not worry about it.
It's actually really funny that you mentioned just now that after the midterm for you, you talk about more if you're not like, if you're nervous about it. Because I don't know about other people. For me, I'm the exact opposite. I think in first year, I kind of had that thing where everyone comes out just like, oh, I did not know anything. But then I think as I kind of like migrated till second semester, like, or second year, I started like, I would just hate to listen to people, like, to talk about exams. Like, if I felt like I did well, I would like maybe be curious about this one question and talk to people about that one question. But in general, I just run out of the exam center because people are going to be talking about that.
Understandable.
Exam. Yeah. And yeah, like whatever works for you, because a lot of my friends talk about it and they feel better after it. I personally just want to forget about that exam and just like, you know, move on. But yeah, it's like different approaches.
Yeah, you usually feel better if you got the same answer. If you both got it wrong or if you both got it right. But if you get the wrong answer, like one person feels worse than the other person. So it's not always a good thing.
You're right. Yeah.
So I think we spoke a little bit about like how you might not be able to relax, like if you have an exam on the next day or something. Did you guys have any like tight exam schedules in first year?
I think so. I do remember being pretty stressed with like a lot of evaluations back to back. I can't remember like specifically if it was like a midterm and then like a midterm right after. But yeah, I think there were like times where the window. Oh, actually, no. I think there was one time where we had like a midterm in like the evening and then we had one in the morning. So that was like quite.
Yeah.
That's awful.
I think. Wait, that might be completely.
No, it's
But-
like, yeah.
No. I think we had like, it was usually like Tuesdays and Thursdays we had the midterm. Like it's like 2 midterms a week for like 5 weeks or something. Like 6. Like it was It was honestly something ridiculous. Like, it shouldn't have been that intense. But it was like 8 or 9 midterms.
Because you get 2 rounds of midterms.
Yes, which is
kind of ridiculous, but also it helps you spread the marks out, to be fair.
Yeah, but like after first year, that in my experience that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
At least in my courses, because in Indy, yeah. After that, you never experience anything quite as back to back as you do in first year. But I can't speak for all disciplines.
That's fair. Yeah. I think for ACE second year, you're already loaded with work. They try to really like not make you that stressful. But I think one big thing is because first year, surprisingly, like exams, like 2 rounds of exams, kind of like is the most stressful part of first year. I would say like that part is more stressful for me than second year. Like I enjoyed second year a little bit more in some sense. Like I was like more calm because I've been used to it in first year, so it kind of like hit me with the 10 exams or something like that.
Yeah. I do want to say something about midterm versus finals. I think generally people are very afraid for finals because, you know, they're finals. But something you have to consider is that during midterms, you're also still doing class.
Yeah.
Right? You're not just doing finals. So because you're in midterms and in class, I think there's a pretty strong case that midterm season is significantly harder than final season, because during finals you're just studying for finals, but during midterms you're doing both, which is literally double the workload. So after midterm season, definitely just take a breath and know that that was actually
the hardest
part of the year. Like, you were done the hardest part of the year, and after that you can kind of calm down for like a week, because you have like 2 weeks or more between midterms and finals to just get your feet on the ground again.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I think the hardest part about midterms and after midterms or after a midterm, whatever, but the hardest part is that you have to catch up for other courses too. You can spend the last 12 hours studying for this course, but you know in the back of your mind you have 5 other courses lining up for you to study. And some people forget that, because I think it's sometimes been a habit for some people in high school to be like, okay, I have exam for this, let's focus on this, and then they can catch up later for other courses. I would say university, you cannot do that. And sometimes for some courses when you're behind, like it takes forever to catch up, and then you're catched up for this course and you took this exam, now you're more behind on the other courses, so not falling into that trap in a sense.
I fully agree that you should definitely do your best to stay up to date with the rest of your classes, because the cycle of I'm going to skip classes for 2 days to study for this midterm tomorrow, or 2 days from today, and then I'm going to catch up for that afterwards, it doesn't work. And like I know a lot of people do it. Like I know a lot of people do that, but my advice would be to, if you have to kind of pick either, like I have to go to these 2 classes, or sorry, these 2 days worth of classes, or study for my midterm and pass it, to not put all of your eggs in one basket. Like do your best to study for those midterms, but you will just be caught in the cycle of not knowing what's on the next midterm and skipping all your classes to study for that midterm that you had to skip for those classes because you had to study for the midterm before it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. Like, I think the term that comes to mind is like, it's not sustainable, like that type of study method, because even when you're like catching up on lectures after, you can only get so much from someone's notes versus like when the prof is saying it. Because like when the prof like is teaching, sometimes they'll like emphasize a certain point like 3 times, but like you wouldn't have heard that if you weren't like there, right? So you wouldn't know like that's a key thing to know. So yeah, definitely attending lectures, like not like putting them off for exams is like I've done that, like I've put them off before, like in first year, and definitely would not recommend.
I mean, it's different this year because all their lecture is recorded, but
yeah, that's true.
But one thing is like catching up is hard, whether it's recorded or not. Like you can
mentally it's so challenging to catch up. It's so easy to not catch up.
Yeah.
So don't put yourself in a position where you can just not do it.
Yeah.
Because you won't do it that well.
So we kind of like talked about ourselves just now. So like I guess a more general question is, have you seen any like unhealthy mindsets or that your friends put on themselves after midterms? Let's say they failed a midterm, or like they did really well in a midterm, and like kind of like they just had this like mindset, and then which resulted in them going into a cycle of failing more midterms, or like kind of like do a crash after a good midterms, like something like that.
It's hard for me to like kind of pinpoint different mindsets as like healthy and unhealthy, because I feel like what might be like something that I might perceive as healthy might be unhealthy like in someone else's eyes, and vice versa. But I think like a strategy, like an approach that someone like one of my friends has taken to like university in general, that's like really different than what I've done. So is that they kind of like after like midterms, like finals, like that's like during those times they like don't talk to anyone. They kind of like lock themselves in their room and just like grind it out. And I mean it's working for them because they're doing well. But I think like for me personally, I think it's really important to like still like talk to people during those times. Like it can get like really overwhelming trying to like study alone, and like something that I never did in high school but like has really helped me a lot in university is like study buddies, and like actually going to the library to study, which I never used to do, because I find like especially like some like, which I'll probably talk about later too, not really knowing like if engineering was for me in first year, like having other people to study around me, like that's what like motivated me to study, because I saw other people studying, so I was like, I need to be studying, versus at home, because I like was really unsure about my own personal goals. Like when I'd be alone, I wouldn't really have other people to like kind of like motivate me to study, so I'd just like get distracted really easily. But yeah, I guess like to answer your question, that's like a different mindset that I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was someone that I was very close with in first year who I actually don't speak to. She actually went to a different school. She didn't go to U of T. Whenever she had a midterm, she was a big worrier in the sense that no matter what happened during that midterm, that final, how good or how bad it was, she would focus on what went wrong and not so much about the victories, which is a tough mindset to be in, because at the end of the day, it's kind of hard to get in the mind of somebody else. But she would worry about everything that happened, to, I would argue, an unhealthy point, because she would like break down, and she wasn't okay after every test or midterm, no matter what happened, which is kind of like the opposite of how I approach my midterms, right? I try to go with it happened, it's over, and on to the next. And with that, I would say I would emphasize that a midterm is just a midterm. A good or a bad grade is just a good or a bad grade. It's quite meaningless at the end of the day. Sure, you got to pass this course, but there are certain times where you have to step back and reflect on how much you're worrying about things that are quite literally out of your control now, because it's over, affect you mentally now. Try to focus on the good stuff, because if you're having a good time doing whatever you're doing, no matter how good or how bad it went, at least you had a good time, I think.
Yeah, I would say that for me, I've experienced some unhealthy mindsets. Like I've definitely had I've had different approaches to a midterm, and there has been like ones where it was horrible, but I was mentally prepared for it. And I think sometimes being mentally prepared is important. Like before exams, I would tell myself, you know what, like I go in, I'll just do the exam, and when I'm out of the exam, it's done. Like you guys said, it's done. Like you can't change anything about it. And I think having that mental prep really helps, because when I don't have those mental preps, sometimes I would come out and then it just my mental state just can't really stand it. And I think all my friends know I would just like break down in my own room and just, it's not even about the exam anymore. It's about how can I do so badly? And then it just kind of goes into like that bubble with yourself, just like, oh, am I even like, should I even be an engineer? Like I'm just like so different from other people. Where like honestly, sometimes you're even sitting on the average point. Like honestly, everyone feels that in engineering. So like, I feel like not falling into don't like, you can question yourself whether you're suited for engineering, but don't come from a grade based point, like, or like don't base it off any of the midterms. Base it off like whether you enjoy the material or not.
100%. That's the best indicator, I think, of whether or not you belong. If you like it here, no, not even if you like it here. If you like the material, that's really what matters.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I think one big thing about first year is they try to help you pass. Like, as long as you put in effort, even if you feel like many midterms, let's say, you might still be able to pass with a curve, let's say, or like they help you like some extra academic help and then you can pass, something like that. So yeah, just don't stress yourself too much, as we emphasize in this episode. Like, it's just a midterm.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to tell someone just don't worry about it.
100%. Yeah.
But like, I think it would be nice if like the person can have another person, like a parent or like
to
a
talk
friend,
about,
to talk through it, and then as you talk through it, you'll realize how ridiculous some of the things that you're thinking is, or like how it's not really a big deal in the grand scheme of things. So I think it's really important to find someone that you trust, that you can talk to.
Yeah, I think that's like a really good point, because even like looking back on it now, like a midterm in the moment, like in first year was like the end of the world for me, but like now looking back on it, it's like over and like not even something that I like worry about at all. So it's definitely like looking at the bigger picture, like getting your headspace out of like just that midterm. It's really helpful, like talking through it with someone.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how many people I've literally broke down in front because of a midterm. And then what you don't realize is they kind of feel you too, so they start like being like kind of breaking down. But then like you can argue that it's healthy or unhealthy, but for me it really helps because after that we both just laugh about it and we move on.
If you can do that, then that's a great thing.
Yeah, for sure. But then just remind you, like, don't find a crying buddy and just cry all the way together at the end, you know? Like, that's also not healthy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. A lot of these things are easier said than done, you know? Like you said, Aki, you know, you can't just... if you say, hey, don't worry about it, just stop stressing, like, that has literally never worked. Yeah, it does not work.
What are some methods that you guys kind of, like, actively put into, like, did you guys, like you said, you put your exam on the table to remind yourself, like, you can just deal with this right now and, like, kind of, like, use that to improve yourself in a sense. Like, do you guys have any active methods used to motivate yourself or just get out of that negativity zone?
I think for me, what I do is sometimes I like to talk to my parents as well, and I'm also I practice Buddhism, and so sometimes I like to pray, just because it, like, not even including the religious component, it just like makes me calm, and so I think implementing like some kind of mindfulness practice is also really good.
For me, I like didn't really meditate before, and it was actually Aki. He was like, because I was so stressed out, he was like, try meditating, and our like other friend Tom, he also told me to meditate. So like honestly, like, it's not for everyone because some people just can't sit through, but I would really recommend going through a guided meditation and just try and do a really short one, like a 10 minutes every day. Like, sometimes what I realize is like it helps you like without you knowing. Like, you'll still think that doesn't help, but then slowly you kind of like change your mindset and you'll just like feel that calm inside you.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people using Calm, or is it Calm? No, Headspace. And if you haven't tried it, and I haven't tried it either, but if getting into a positive mindset is something you struggle with, I would highly recommend it, just from everybody else recommending it,
Mhm.
I think it's like $10 for
I would
a
say
year subscription.
something like that.
Like something ridiculous. Like they're leaving money on the table. It's something like so cheap that if you just want to give it a try, like what's the harm in that?
Mm-hmm. Or even just on YouTube, search up some videos. Start with that, and then see if that helps.
Yeah, I strongly believe in mindfulness. I do something in life as well. It's kind of just something I've done for the last 2 years, probably since partway through first year, and that is framing literally like everything positively, and I think that sounds impossible to some people. So it's kind of hard for me to explain how to do that. I feel like I just learned that from my mom. She just kind of looks at everything positively, so I kind of just picked that up from her. But
it's I think I've tried and adjust the mindset, and it does help. Like you don't have to literally think everything is positive, but I think the start to like when you start thinking about this exam as a failure, and you kind of like come in and force yourself to be like, you know what, it's not a failure. Like that initial step, even though you might not truly believe at the beginning, just saying it, spelling it out,
yes,
can be a start and can help.
Saying it out loud, 100% is the first step to changing some of those negative habits or changing some of that negative mindset.
100%.
Yeah, because I think that what I do is, so an example of framing things positively is, say I failed like a chem midterm. It's like as bad as it was, it's like, hey, at least I know I'm not gonna be a chemist. At least I know that for sure. Make a joke out of something. And I'm sure there's times where you shouldn't be positive about everything. But in terms of school, I feel like the more positive you're able to flip your mindset, the better of a time you'll have. And I think that applies to most things in life, not everything. And it'll bite me in the back one day. But framing as much as you can positively is, I think, one of the keys to just improving your overall happiness, which is, I think, the goal at the end of the day.
I think I agree with that, but I think there's a mistake that a person can fall into where like you try to frame things positively and you have a false belief that actually isn't true. For example, like if you get a bad score on the midterm, you can be like, yeah, I'm smart. I don't have to worry about this. But like you're not actually smart. Like you have to actually change the way you study.
Yep.
And so like be careful how you frame it positively.
Yeah, that's a really good disclaimer. Because you can't be walking around thinking you can get through without trying either. That doesn't work.
You have to try.
Yeah, it's like if something like really crappy happened, make yourself okay with what happened, but that doesn't mean don't go out and try to not let that happen again. Like not try to fix it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Adding on to like Aki's point, I think like another thing is like after kind of like bringing yourself into like a good headspace, a big thing is like looking at, or something that I've been trying to do a lot more, because I never really used to think a lot about like my emotions or like how I feel after a certain thing, but like taking time to like ask myself like, why do I feel this way, and how do I like either like continue feeling this way or like prevent myself from feeling this way again. So like I remember, I think it was a midterm or it was some other evaluation that it was like one of the first few evaluations in my first year. I'm pretty sure it was like my calc midterm actually. But like after like doing really badly on it, I was like, oh my goodness, like I went through this whole imposter syndrome, like I'm not supposed to be here, like blah blah, like I'm not like smart enough for this. And then my parents were like, they could really help me like get into this mindset. They're like, okay, so you're saying this, but like how are you going to prevent yourself? What's going to happen next? Are you going to fail your like physics midterm next? And I was like, no. They're like, okay, then what are you going to do to prevent that? And I'm like, well, I like, I did study for this. I don't know, like, so something that a resource that I highly recommend that helped me is, so U of T has learning strategists, and like I went in to the office and like cried my tears in front of this learning strategist. You know, I was like, oh my gosh, like I just failed. I'm like, I don't know how to learn, I guess. And like just turning those like negative emotions into like productive steps to like prevent that from happening next time really helped me. So basically, just like to talk about this resource really quickly is they sit down with you and they like, it's like customized for your schedule. So they like write down your timetable. Like I'm a commuter student. They put in where I commute, and then like where I should take breaks. Like after commuting, I'm not gonna get right into the grind, but like I'm probably gonna grab snack. Like she literally like helped me plan my life to like the bone, and like having that was like really helpful, and like just having her as a connection, because after in second year I kind of started like struggling again, so I like sent her an email, and like she like sent me back like a schedule template that I can use. And like I think definitely there's a lot of resources out there that like as long as you just like look for them after midterms that can really help you kind of like either overcome it or like how you're feeling, or I guess like prepare you for the next one so that you don't have to feel that way again.
Actively trying to fix it. Yeah, I agree, because at the end of the day, like you don't want to be in that mindset again, and you can fix it somehow. Like if you're in engineering, you're not dumb. Honestly, like you might think you're dumb, but you're not dumb. Like you can pass through this. And the learning strategist, I've actually also looked into it too. Unfortunately, when I was trying to go, like she was on leave at that time, but I would definitely look back into it because that sounds pretty cool, and I would love to have my life, you know, platforming. Yeah. Okay, speaking on which, you just mentioned like earlier that you were like unsure whether you wanted to be in engineering and stuff like that. So I know that you guys both switched majors. Cassey, you were in Engsci and then you switched into ECE. Like, what was like the thought process and like behind that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just gonna preface this by saying I actually didn't switch by choice. I kind of had to because of my academic performance in Engsci first year. But for context, so the way like, and I was kind of joking around about this earlier, but I think I like went through a moment in first year where I realized that like I didn't really know what I really wanted to do with my life. Like like going into like applying for post-secondary options, I applied to like different programs at different schools. I applied to like business and like aviation. I applied to life sciences, and then engineering wasn't like a thing that I even thought about until like grade 12, because my entire life I thought that I was going to go into like politics, government, humanities, and if I was to go into sciences, it would be like life sciences. So I took bio and chemistry all throughout high school. I also came from an arts specialized high school, so I was studying like visual arts my entire time. And yeah, it wasn't until grade 12, when I think my dad kind of like introduced me to the idea of engineering, and I applied for it. So then here's the realization that I had. I realized that like for me, all my entire life, like a good post-secondary school was like the end goal for me. Whereas like I think it's really important to have like a bigger goal and see school as like some tool to like help you get towards that goal. And for me, like I realized I was like I didn't understand. Like in first year I did really badly, and I'm like I don't understand. Like in high school, like I wasn't doing this badly. Like what is going on? Like I'm still studying for things. And then I realized that I had like themes that I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to work with people. I wanted to like, you know, like design things, but I didn't have like a practical, like tactile vision of what that looked like. And I realized that like for me, and I guess this is an unconscious thing, but I can't like, in talking about motivation and things like that, I can't like work hard just for the sake of working hard. Like I need something to work towards, like unconsciously, I guess. So like having this realization, so going back to that, so in first year I didn't have this realization really. I just knew that something was up, and I wasn't sure if engineering was for me, and engineering science in itself was already a pretty challenging program to kind of go through this with. So because I didn't have this like clear vision of what I wanted, I wasn't doing really well. And then and it wasn't until second semester when I started like having more meetings with my academic advisor and like talking to my parents a bit more, it was like I realized like I should probably start looking at like which of the options in like core 8 that I like wanted to like pursue. So I honestly, this realization didn't come to me until later, like this whole like I need a bigger like goal. But when I was like looking for out of the core 8 options, I like looked back to like what I enjoyed most in first year, and I actually really enjoyed like programming labs, like making a tic-tac-toe game or like making a chess game. Like that was super fun to me. But also because I still wanted to keep my options open because I wasn't exactly sure. For me, like it seemed at the time and that ECE was like very flexible in terms of like what field it could be applied to. Like I saw it as like, you know, like whether even if I was to go into like something that's not engineering related, because I was talking to upper years too about this when I went through my little life crisis. They were like, I know people with their iron rings who are like working in completely different things that have nothing to do with engineering. And I realized like, okay, so if that's the case, I want to choose like a discipline that's like not too niche, that like it'll be hard to apply in other fields. So anyways, that's kind of like the whole process. So after like sitting with my academic advisor and like me having to transition, that was like why I chose ECE out of the other core 8s.
I imagine your parents were probably really supportive of your choice. And I think maybe that's like an important part, talking to your friends and family.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, like parents, because like obviously in high school, like my parents wanted me to do really well, so like the news of like having to switch was like pretty shocking to them too. But I think like something I'm really grateful is like my parents, like they want me to do, like they really like they trust me, and they trust that like that
you'll be able to go through the process.
Yeah, so what. Like that they understand that like the path isn't going to be like a perfectly upgoing like like diagram. There's going to be low points. So it's like really nice to have like parents who like understand that there's going to be like
that's fair,
like those confusing moments.
Yeah, you mentioned that you talked to a lot of upper years. Were there any like deciding factors, or were there any words that you really remember that really helped you through this like transition? Like it's okay to go from like, let's say, Engsci into like ECE.
But I think honestly something that really helped me was actually talking to people who like graduated and like left engineering, and like I talked to people from like actually just in general, like people who were like much older, like 30, and had their iron rings, and I think that helped me a lot because like it helped.
Like you realize that sometimes what you study is not necessarily what you have to do.
Yeah, that, and then also like it helped me with my whole like imposter syndrome like thing, which I didn't even know was a thing until like I learned about in first year. But like just getting like that, because definitely I would say 100% like your confidence, your pride, or like my confidence, my pride like took a big hit in first year. But like talking to like people who graduated who can like, kind of like help you on your path of like rebuilding that, it's definitely really helpful.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, how like your career path isn't like a straight line. Just because like to give another example, like I was listening to Tim Ferriss's podcast, and he had Hugh Jackman on the show. It was really interesting because like I thought Hugh Jackman, he probably went to like an acting school and then became an actor, but he actually studied journalism when he was in university, and at the very end he decided to switch onto acting. And so it just shows you that like, okay, we're studying engineering now, but that's not necessarily what we're gonna do in the future. We might and you came from like an art school, so maybe like in the future you'll do something like a cross section of like art and like engineering or something. And so like you really don't know what you're gonna do in the future. So yeah,
I would say like, yeah, of course both mindsets are important. I think we're bringing out the mindset that it's okay to not know what you want to do and just choose something that you think is the most suitable for you at the time. But that being said, also if you have a really just big passion about something, you know that's like what you're in is wrong for you, like go for it. It's never too late to change. Like I know, Jason, you were in MSc and then you switched into Indy, right?
Yeah. So my path was a little more straightforward, I think. I applied to U of T, Waterloo, and Mac for Eng. And when I applied to U of T, it initially was like my last choice. I didn't want to go here. I went here, I only applied because of the name recognition, of it being as good as like Waterloo or Mac. And I applied for, I think, Mac and ECE as like my top two choices without fully understanding what they were. I knew ECE was something with computers. I knew Mac was something cool. I don't
With
know.
machines,
Something
yes.
with machines. And I applied, and I got in. But to none of the four things that I actually applied for. I got into MSc. And I was like, sure, like whatever. It's not like I'm going to go there anyways. And then I went to Mac for their tour, and I was like, I don't know if I like it here. And I chose not to go there. And I have other friends who go there and love it. But I was like, yeah, it's not for me. And eventually the choice boiled down to either U of T for this miscellaneous engineering program that I didn't apply for, or concurrent education in Queens. And I don't really remember how I chose. I was kind of like, yeah, I want to be an engineer, so I'm going to do that. So I came to U of T, and I thought to myself, maybe like I will like materials. Maybe I'll make myself like it. And Phys Chem was first semester, and I was like, I don't know what's happening. I don't like it. Like, bro, I don't like it here. And I decided that it was not for me. So I spoke to my TA in EPS 100 actually. And I was like, yo, I hate it here. I don't like MSc. I like U of T. I don't like MSc. And I like product design. I like computers. I like tech. And I was like, what should I do? She was like, have you heard of Indy? And I was like, I have no idea what Indy is.
Does anyone?
I still don't know what Indy is. But she basically gave me a quick rundown of kind of what it was. And I was like, that sounds more or less exactly what I want to do. So from that point forward, I was like, yeah, I'm going to transfer. So I spoke to the people, I spoke to the first year office about me wanting to change streams. And they're like, you have to wait until next year. You have to finish to the year. And then if your grades are good enough, you can switch over. I was like, okay. So that was my main motivation first year for doing well. I worked pretty hard, and then I got to switch into Indy, and it's like, for me, it is the perfect program, because I thought for a while that I was going to be just a coder, a developer, and I wasn't that good at it. I couldn't really wrap my head around like Java. And I was like, man, if I can't wrap my head around Java, like, what am I gonna do? But it wasn't even that. It was more so that like I just didn't really like coding that much. I thought I would. I knew it was gonna make me a lot of money, and I had a cool job, but I didn't like it, so I stopped pursuing that. Yeah, and then so I got into Indy and got to try out a lot of different things, such as operations research, which is basically, how do I do this thing the fastest and the cheapest. I did a bit of HF, of human factors, which is a little bit of like, how do I design this website so that people actually want to use it.
So you find the right thing for you, essentially.
Exactly. I tried out a lot of different
great.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how I switched in. I basically decided I didn't want to be at MSA anymore. I spoke to the first year office, and they told me to work hard and apply for the switch next year.
Was it hard for the transition, would you say? Like, let's say making new friends, or even academically, was it that different?
Well, academically, I would say like it is different, but it's different for everybody, right? It's not more different than anybody else is experiencing, because we all did more or less the same first year. Making friends was, I would expect it to be a little challenging for most people. I got lucky because I knew somebody in first year, in Indy, so I kind of became friends with him, and then became friends with his friends, and now I have my friends in industrial engineering. But yeah, I wouldn't say that it was a hard transition at all. It was pretty seamless. You didn't have to take any more courses. And now your courses that you're in, you probably like more than if you didn't switch.
Yeah.
If you want to switch courses, like switch. Sorry, if you want to switch programs, like switch your program.
Yeah.
Like don't. Like there is no sunk cost right now. Like you can literally change for no cost. So do it. Because you shouldn't be in a program that you don't want to be in.
How was the transition for you?
Similar to Jason's point, like the transition was like pretty like I would say like standard what everyone would kind of like transition from first year to second year. So I feel like first year is just like a lot of the foundational courses. In terms of friends, something that's really nice is like a lot of people are actually switching majors from first year to second year, and in ECE like a lot of my friends were like either track 1 or like they just switched in from Engsci, like my first friends when I first like switched into the major. So like everyone was kind of starting from like the same, like meeting new people. And in general, like with the school culture, like the SKULE culture, it's like so much about community, and I feel like everyone's like really open to like helping each other and like be friends with you. So like that definitely helps with the transition.
I would imagine it wouldn't be too hard. Like I can't really say from my point of view, but Aki and I are both track 1s, so like I feel like it might be the similar experience. Like as a track 1 going into another program, you meet a lot of other track 1s, but how do you mesh in with the OG, like Indy people, OG ECE people? And it's not too hard, especially sometimes. Let's say ECE, we have 3 sections, so like you can mesh well with your own session. Like sometimes it'll be hard to mesh out with like other sessions because you don't have classes together, but just within your sessions you'll be able to make a lot of friends because you go through the same pain and happiness, of course. Like you feel the same joy, same pain, same exams. So I would say like if you're like Jason just said, if you want to switch, make the decision and just go for it.
Yeah, everyone's a track 1. Like in first year, everyone's a track 1. Like they tell you that if you're in track 1, you get to choose whatever you want.
Yeah.
That was the one that I applied for because they told me that.
Yeah.
Because I could do whatever I wanted first year and then choose after.
The reality.
But like straight up, everyone's a track 1. With the exception of maybe ECE, because like you gotta get a good average to get to ECE. Everyone can switch into like basically anything they want after first year. Like, don't think because you're in Indy now you can't switch out of it. Yeah. Everyone is a track 1. You can switch with a lot of freedom in first year with 0 consequences. So if you love your program, then great. Yeah. But if you don't and you want to look at what else is out there, out of the core 8s, do that because it is not even close to too late to change your mind.
100%. And like switching after first year is like probably the easiest time to. I think it is the easiest time to like switch.
Yeah.
There's lots of resources to help you switch too, I would say so.
Yeah. Oh, I want to mention, because I was a track 1, so like at the end of the semester I had to choose what discipline I wanted to get into, and so I looked all over the internet like trying to find about each discipline. I just want to tell the first years, there's this YouTube channel called Engineer Truth. It's a very bad channel, don't listen to it. Just because it literally like talks bad on every single disciplines of engineering other than software, and so yeah, don't listen to it.
That's interesting. Yeah. Okay, I think that's a pretty good wrap-up point. I guess as a wrap-up, I would like for you guys to each give another, I guess, general tips, like whatever tips you would want to give to the first year. Just keep in mind that this episode is going to be airing October 22nd. So that's like kind of around the end of first round of midterm-ish. Yeah. So around that time. So yeah. And whoever wants to go first, you guys can go ahead.
One like big tip that I would give is like honestly take some time at like this is just like a tip in general that I need to practice more is to like take some time to really think about like what you want to do like after school and like kind of see like how things are going to fit in like, because I remember previously when I was younger, when people would ask me, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or where do you see yourself in 10 years? I always just gave the broadest answer because I never actually took time to sit down by myself in my room, like, for a few hours and really write out, like, where I saw myself. And I think, like, going through that process, actually this past summer, was, like, really valuable for me because I feel a lot more clear about things. So I definitely recommend doing that. And then some other just general tips is, honestly, explore U of T resources. Like, it's including your tuition, first of all, so you might as well take advantage of them. And there's just so many awesome ones. Like, I found out about drop-in fitness classes, and they're so fun. Like, I go to back when we were on campus, and even online, Hard House is offering, like, virtual classes too, which I'll just talk about that now since, like, that's probably most relevant. So I did summer school this past summer, did some, like, third-year courses, and I had to pay for, like, my gym membership, so I was like, I might as well see what that's all about. And I did a yoga class, and they literally make corrections, like, through Zoom to you. Like, it's super fun. It's another way to stay connected. So definitely, I would say, like, talk to a lot of people as well. Like, join some clubs. I think, like, a big thing is just, like, talking to people because you find out a lot through that.
Yeah, I would say do whatever you gotta do to have a good time. Like let's be real. Whatever you're doing doesn't matter if you're not having a good time. To some degree. I mean, like, you're gonna have to do things you don't want to do sometimes.
For sure.
But for the most part, I think you're trying to maximize your happiness here and later, right? And personally, like, if I had not a good sleep last night, I'm probably not gonna have a great day. So, like, get as much sleep as you need, you know? Also, you're not gonna be learning that well if you're just tired, you know? If you're very tired and you have to wake up, if you choose to wake up early and not sleep to listen to, like, 8 hours of classes at 50% brain capacity versus sleeping those extra 2 hours and having to push your day back a little bit, but you're at 80% capacity, like, just do the math. Just get enough sleep and you'll be happier and you'll learn more by doing that.
I would say, as a fact, actually, I think most friends I know, or engineers I know, said that they slept way more in university than in high school, which is interesting, but, like, yeah, just putting that out there.
Yeah, I think I also did sleep more in university. Like, in high school, I just didn't care about, like, my body. It was like, whatever I'm doing is whatever I'm doing. But now, like, you're an adult. On paper, you're an adult.
Yeah.
And, like, I know that most of us, including me, are not actually adults. But if you start sleeping properly, like, your life is going to change for the better, 100% the better. So my biggest advice is get enough sleep. It'll improve every facet of your life.
That's great advice. Sleep.
Yeah, very important.
Okay, thank you guys for coming today, and it's very exciting because this is actually our first in-person interview, so it went great in my opinion, so thank you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Exactly, this was super fun.
Well, that's it for today's episode of First Year Decoded. Thanks for listening, and thank you to Jason Loy and Cassey Shao for joining me today. This podcast is hosted by IEEE U of T, content creation done by Akinori Kimura, Brittany Chow, Himana Shindo, Hachin Zhang, and Catherine Leung. Music created by Sujay Kumar, audio edited by Akinori Kimura, and graphics done by Kathy Zhang. Remember to follow us on social media, IEEE U of T, to get more information and updates about future events and more content. Once again, thanks for listening to First Year Decoded. We will see you on the next episode.